Trump is on a plane to Beijing, right now, May 14th, 2026, and the reason he is going tells you everything the headlines are not saying. Pay attention to what just happened in the last 48 hours. A senior U.S. official was forced to publicly confirm, on the record, that a rare earth minerals deal with China remains in effect. Not that a new deal was signed, not that Washington negotiated from strength. They confirmed an existing deal is still alive. That is not a flex, that is a lifeline. And here is what that means for you, for the global economy, and for every factory, defense contractor, and electric vehicle manufacturer operating right now. Stick with us until the end of this video, because what we are about to show you is a strategic story that started in 2020, escalated through 2025, and is reaching its most critical moment this week in Beijing. If you are watching Verified Bulletin for the first time, this is what we do. No noise, no spin.
Just the verified sequence of events and what they actually mean. Start with what just happened this week, because the timing is almost too precise to be coincidence. Trump and Xi last met in October 2025 in South Korea, where they agreed to pause a trade war that had seen the U.S. impose triple-digit tariffs on Chinese goods, and Beijing threatened to restrict the global supply of rare earths. The headline said a truce. What actually happened was something far more consequential. The agreement, formalized in November 2025, was designed to last 1 year. Under its terms, China agreed to suspend new export controls on rare earth minerals and grant general export licenses. In exchange, the U.S. committed to reducing tariffs on Chinese goods by 10%. Read that again. China paused the controls it built. America cut the tariffs it threatened. One side gave up infrastructure, the other gave up a number on a spreadsheet.
And now, 6 months later, a senior U.S. official confirmed that the agreement remains in force, adding that discussions are ongoing, and any decision regarding an extension would be announced at the appropriate time. Not announced with confidence, not announced with leverage, announced at the appropriate time. That is the language of a side that is waiting, not a side that is winning. Now go back further. Because this story did not start in 2025. In 2020, China formally adopted a strategy called dual circulation. The idea was precise. Reduce dependence on foreign markets. Make the Chinese economy indispensable to the outside world. Become less vulnerable to external shocks. In October 2020, Xi Jinping told the CCP's Central Financial and Economic Affairs Commission that China must tighten international production chains' dependence on China, forming powerful countermeasures and deterrent capabilities against foreigners artificially cutting off supplies. He said that in 2020,
the rare earth controls came in 2025. The gap between those two statements was not delay, it was construction. Here is what China built in that window. China currently mines over 60% of the world's rare earths. It processes over 80% of global supply, and it produces approximately 90% of the world's high-performance rare earth permanent magnets. According to the International Energy Agency, these critical minerals go into jet engines, radar systems, electric vehicles, wind turbines, consumer electronics, missile guidance systems, and the advanced semiconductors powering the global AI race. That is not a trade chip, that is an ecosystem, and Beijing spent nearly a decade quietly assembling it before ever switching it on as leverage. In April 2025, China imposed its first major rare earth export controls since 2010. Then, in October 2025, Beijing announced sweeping new unilateral controls on rare earth materials, equipment, and technology. Legal analysts described the new measures as a Chinese version of the United States Foreign Direct Product Rule, extending Beijing's jurisdiction to foreign companies whose products use Chinese-origin rare earth materials, covering any product containing 0.1% or more by value of Chinese-origin rare earths, regardless of where that product was manufactured. Regardless of where it was manufactured. That sentence covers factories in Michigan, defense contractors in Virginia, semiconductor fabs in Taiwan.
Washington's response was a 100% tariff threat. Beijing's response was 4 words: "We are not afraid." Now, here is the part of this story that should concern every single person watching. His confidence further strengthened last year when he successfully beat back Trump's unprecedented trade escalation, which pushed tariffs past 140%, by wielding China's break-glass tool of rare earth minerals and magnets.
When Xi threatened to restrict those flows in April and October 2025, Trump folded rather than credibly threaten escalation. That analysis is not from a Chinese state outlet. That is from the Council on Foreign Relations, published May 10, 2026, 4 days before this summit. And the summit itself tells the same story. When President Donald Trump arrives in Beijing on May 14th, the summit will fall far short of his last trip in 2017. Then, Chinese President Xi Jinping staged a State Visit Plus, which included a private dinner in the Forbidden City, a parade through Tiananmen Square, and a Great Hall ceremony unveiling $250 billion in business deals. 2017 was the red carpet treatment for a new American president. 2026 is a working meeting between 2 men who both know which side has more leverage right now. So why is Trump going? Because the rare earth deal expires. And as of March 2026, China's rare earth magnet exports rose 8.2% year-over-year on a global basis. But shipments specifically destined for the U.S. actually decreased over the same period, raising questions about whether Beijing is fully honoring the spirit of the agreement. Think about what that means. The deal is technically in place, but American supply chains are receiving less. China is redirecting those exports to other partners, to other economies, to nations that have not spent the last year threatening Beijing with triple-digit tariffs. The tap is technically open. The pressure is being quietly reduced. And here is the critical data point almost nobody is talking about right now. New U.S. procurement regulations set to take effect in January 2027 will prohibit Chinese-sourced rare earths from defense supply chains entirely. That is 8 months away. And the United States does not yet have a fully operational domestic alternative at the scale required to replace what Beijing currently controls. Is Washington doing something about it? Yes, actually. In February, the Pentagon finalized financial support worth $157.7 million for U.S. rare earth developer USA Rare Earth, with funding slated for development of the Round Top rare earth mine in Texas and for the construction of processing infrastructure. The Trump administration also invested $400 million in MP Materials through the Pentagon last year. MP Materials operates Mountain Pass in California, the only commercially operating rare earth mine in the United States. $400 million sounds significant. Against an industry where China has invested at national scale for a decade, analysts describe it as a start, not a solution. Building a mine takes years. Building a processing facility takes longer. And processing is where the real bottleneck sits. Mining the ore is step 1. Refining it into the magnets used in F-35 jets and Abrams tanks is a completely different industrial capability that does not yet exist at scale anywhere outside Chinese-controlled facilities. Washington is also moving to reorganize the entire cycle infrastructure around the United States and its allies, signing agreements with Ukraine, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Australia on critical minerals and rare earth production. Every one of those agreements matters. None of them closes the gap by 2027, and Beijing knows exactly how long that gap is. This is the part of the story where you need to stop and ask one question. Why would China agree to this summit at all if it holds all the cards? China feels confident enough to be able to stand up to Trump on many key issues, including sanctions, technology controls, critical minerals, and Iran. However, the PRC's eagerness to hold a summit between Trump and Xi Jinping signals that it is much less confident than many observers believe. That is the nuance the mainstream coverage is missing. China is not in a position of pure strength either. China ended 2025 with a record trade surplus, likely reaping dividends from shifting trade to Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America, as a decline accelerated in exports to the United States. But a domestic economy under pressure, a property sector still recovering, and youth unemployment still a political risk inside China mean she needs stability too, just not urgently enough to offer structural concessions. What this summit actually represents is two large economies that have spent the last year bleeding each other, now sitting down to decide how long the ceasefire lasts.
And according to CSIS, one of America's most respected strategic think tanks, President Trump's visit will likely represent a relatively modest step toward greater stability and predictability, not a breakthrough. Modest stability. That is the outcome. After 145% tariffs, rare earth shutoffs, a 100% tariff threat, and a diplomatic cancellation at APEC, the result is a modest step. Now step back and look at the full sequence. Xi announces dual circulation in 2020. China consolidates rare earth processing through 2021 and 2022. China Central Rare Earth Group is established, pulling most of national production into centralized management. April 2025, export controls. October 2025, sweeping new controls. November 2025, truce. March 2026, U.S. shipments quietly decrease. May 2026, Trump flies to Beijing. That is not a reaction to tariffs. That is a decade-long position arriving at its most visible moment. A December 2025 analysis from the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies named it plainly. This was not a reaction. It was a deployment. If you are watching and thinking this only affects geopolitics, stay with us for 60 more seconds. China's decision to suspend exports of a wide range of rare earths and related magnets upended supply chains central to global automakers, with political and economic consequences across Europe, Japan, and South Korea. This is not abstract. The Ford F-150 Lightning uses rare earth magnets. Wind farms across Germany and the Netherlands depend on Chinese processed materials. The radar systems protecting South Korea have components that trace back to Chinese refining capacity. When Beijing turns the dial, everyone feels it, not just Washington. Here is the question we want to leave you with tonight, and we genuinely want your answer in the comments. Trump is walking into Beijing on May 14th. Xi will be waiting.
The rare earth deal is on the table for extension. The January 2027 defense deadline is 8 months out. The domestic U.S. processing capacity is funded, but not built. And the CFR says China has the upper hand. Do you think the United States can build genuine rare earth independence within the next 5 years? Or is this the beginning of a decade-long negotiation where Beijing holds the terms? Tell us what you actually think below. No right answer. We want to know what you see. If this kind of reporting matters to you, please take 2 seconds to like this video right now. It genuinely changes how many people see it, and more people seeing this means more people understanding what is actually happening in real time. Subscribe to Verified Bulletin if you are not already here, because this story is not over. The summit starts in less than 72 hours. We will be back the moment there is something verified to report. Real news, no noise. Verified Bulletin.